Let's do it. Let's do it. Broadcasting from around the world, you're listening to The First 100, a podcast on how founders acquired their first 100 paying customers. Here's your host, Hadi Radwan.
James, good to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Doing great. It's 80 degrees in San Francisco today. We don't get many days like this, so I'm trying to celebrate it.
That's good. That's good. We're at doorsteps of winter, so we should. I'm in London. I'm calling from London, so here it's already a little bit cold. But to put away the weather, let me just start with a quick introduction for our listeners. James Evans is the co-founder of CommandBar, which is a software company that allows users essentially to add a command bar to their app with one line of code to make it easy for them to navigate their GUI. And you've raised to date around 23.8 million from venture capitalists like Insight Partners and Thrive Capital. James, tell us or explain to us, if we were an 8-year-old or someone who doesn't know software, what does CommandBar actually do?
Sure, yeah. The answer has changed a little bit. So what you described was sort of our founding product and the kind of product that we're named for, but we've expanded a bit since then. What we call it today is user assistance software. I'll kind of peel back the onion in case user assistance software is not extraordinarily self-evident. So basically what we mean by user assistance software is we make our software goes into other software. So that could be a web app, mobile app, or just like a website or an e-commerce store. And our goal is to make those products easier to use. So you might be familiar with those pop-ups that appear when you're trying to do something in a website, like, take a tour, or like, we launched a new feature, stuff like that. We essentially build experiences that product marketing customer teams can use to build in-product experiences. So like those pop-ups, but experiences that are essentially less invasive. Like, we just have a thesis that these kind of untargeted pop-up experiences aren't as effective as they used to be. And like, we're kind of never super effective to begin with, essentially because they're annoying. Like, my first reaction when I see those, and what we hear from talking to our customers, this is true of not just me, but a lot of users too, is just the kind of instantaneous like muscle memory of just close those out. These probably aren't for me. This is getting in the way. But like, the intent of those pop-ups is noble. Like, we're using so many products today. Products are increasingly powerful. We don't have time to like learn the intricacies of every UI. So like, I think there's a greater need than ever for ways to help users get the most out of all the various tools they use, but we can't do it in a way that is annoying or they think is not for them. So what our solution is, we want to build experiences that are more respectful and take into account what the user is actually trying to do. So for example, one of the experience we got started with was a search interface where the user can search what they're trying to do and then see kind of results that are relevant to that search. So, maybe you're in an HR product and you're trying to set up a 401k and you search for 401k. Instead of having to like find the right page in the product that allows you to do what you're trying to do, you see, oh, I can just go to this page directly, or I can just take the action directly from this interface, or I can read an article about how 401ks work in this product. And our new interface is similar kind of style of experience that lets the user say what they're trying to do. But instead of search, it's a AI-powered natural language chat interface. So we just launched that last week, actually, and it's called Copilot. So idea basically is try to understand what the user is trying to do and then help them do it without being annoying.
Makes a lot of sense. Let me get that right. If I'm a business user of a software, could be I'm the end user, like the customer, or I could be an internally generated software where there is someone, like in our insurance industry, there's an agent who wants to get a quote. Eventually with CommandBar, if that agent is lost, they could search for the action that they intend to do on the platform, and then there would be a return of an answer, or potentially it would redirect them where they should go. Correct? Have I understood that correct?
Yeah, that's definitely like one of the more common ways we can use. We also do the more proactive, before they've even reached out for help. If we detect that a user appears confused, for example, we can proactively suggest like, hey, you seem confused. What are you trying to do? Or, hey, you seem confused. Watch this helpful video.
It reminds me a little bit when you're in Excel and you want to figure out how to do something. You type F1, there's a Q&A on the side, and then it tells you how to do it. How similar is this?
Similar, very similar concept. The same thing exists in Google Sheets or like all Google Docs. It's just basically this idea that you can search through a space of helpful results. There's different types of results, like there are help docs, there are other types of helpful content like a walkthrough video, there are pages, maybe you can just teleport directly to the page. I think our insight was that you can add other types of results to either your search or chat that can help the user even more. So like one of the really simple loops in CommandBar is user either chats or searches for something. And one of the results is an option that just says, oh, you're trying to do X? Click here to start a tour. The tour looks, in this case, you can go crazy, but you can also make a tour that looks quite similar to kind of other product tours that you might have experienced in years past. But the key is that it was triggered because the user raised their hand and said, like, I'm interested in this thing right now. So in that case, we didn't have to guess that the user was interested in getting a tour. We used it as a response to their intent.
How did you identify early on that there's a pain point in that area? Because today, if I'm someone who has built a software, one of the friction points before CommandBar is I still need to go and document all of these somewhere, so that if I want to create these pop-ups, someone has to write all of these pop-ups essentially. And then if I want to create an FAQ in the back, someone has to do that. So is there a way that you've eliminated that friction, especially when it comes to the AI element?
Not yet. We still rely on someone to tell us how the software works. And we find there's usually, the companies we work with, that content usually exists. It's just not getting very much engagement. I can't tell you how often we see this. Like we'll start working with a company and then we'll uncover like a YouTube channel or some corpus of tutorials that like essentially no users are opening. Like when was the last time, for some B2B product that you're using, when you went to like their YouTube channel to browse? It's just not, we have a lot of other cool stuff to consume on YouTube. I think if I went to YouTube to consume some B2B content, I'd probably get sucked down some more interesting rabbit hole. So part of what we do, a big part of what we do is taking that content and making it easier for users to consume. So like that might be, the most pertinent or relevant or recent example is this Copilot interface. So that's using generative AI to take kind of the knowledge of how the product works and give users answers to their questions, as opposed to saying, oh, you have a question about X, go read this like long document. Another example is videos. So videos are something that's searchable or queryable in our various CommandBar interfaces. It's kind of like Google. When you search something on Google and you get a result that's a video and it says like start watching at 1 minute, 30 seconds. We do the same thing for a company's video content. So if someone has a question about how to do something and that's answered like halfway through some 7-minute tutorial video, we can surface that as a result in product so the user can like follow along as they watch the video. And we found this takes content which is already really great. It's just not being surfaced to users in ways that's easy for them to consume, and it can kind of finally be unleashed.
Take us back to your early days. How did you convince the early users to adopt your solution? What friction points did you have to overcome at the beginning? Because a certain alternative exists and sometimes it's hard to change people's habit. So how did you overcome that early on?
Yeah, two-part answer. In some ways, I don't think we did. Like the origin story of CommandBar is my co-founders and I, we were working on a totally different product. It was an ed tech product, and interface became really complicated. People were kind of struggling with basics. No one was using all the features. And so we were like, shit, we've got to redesign our UI. And we've got to do this whole like persona building, intent mapping exercise. And it was 3 of us. And we were like, this seems really complicated for our like 9-month-old ed tech tool. There must be a quick and dirty like solution. And the solution we came up with was we were inspired by the command palette interface in tools like, it was mainly in developer tools like VS Code and Sublime, but it was starting to pop up in non-developer tools like Superhuman famously has this Command K interface that's really great. And we were like, oh, we'll just create a search bar, and whenever the user's trying to search for, we can just show them the right page or let them just take the action. So like a classic example was copy a course or copy an assignment. That was like in some menu somewhere. And now we just said, hey, yeah, if you're trying to copy an assignment, just like search, click the search button and then search. And we were also kind of excited to see what people searched for because we were like, maybe there's features people want that they're not telling us about, but we'll see in their searches like what they're trying to do. We built this and it was like so effective. And we were like, oh my God, like why doesn't every tool like have this? This is just like so much better. It's not an alternative to like the interface, but it feels like kind of an escape hatch that every user should have access to wherever they are. And we just were kind of obsessed with that idea. And so to answer your question specifically, we started the company during YC. So we applied to YC with the idea, got in. That's kind of when we decided to pivot from our edtech thing to what is now CommandBar. And what we did to get our first set of customers was we just created like really, we would pick 5 products a day that we thought were particularly good fits for CommandBar. And we had this Chrome extension that we could use to kind of sort of semi-spoof what a command bar could look like inside of these products. And then we would create like these kind of 2-3 minute Loom videos where it's like, hey, founder of company, we're this brand new startup building this kind of weird, crazy like search bar product thing. Could be interesting for your users. Here's what it would look like. Here's why we think it would create value for your business. What do you think? And I think the last part is probably the answer to your question, like trying to map this cool user experience, like actual problems you're having. So we always, and this is true today, like we always try to attach to a metric that's as close as possible to the P&L. That in some instances is like conversions. So if you're a self-serve product, getting more users to sign up for a paid plan, retention, deflecting support tickets from going to a human team. But honestly, a lot of it in the early days was just like, isn't this cool? And I think the first set of customers we found it sufficiently cool and sufficiently easy to get started and try it out. We're sufficiently like convinced by that Loom video that they were just like, oh, sure, we'll give it a try. It wasn't replacing anything back then.
This is a very interesting guerrilla tactic, and I would like to double click on it. So it's easy for you to find maybe the email of that person. It's easy to record the Loom and then send it to them. How efficient was it? So were you sending like 100 per day and then 5 responded, or it was actually an efficient guerrilla tactic?
It was pretty efficient. We're not sending very many. I think we were sending like 5 a day. Because I mean, these were like very custom. You know, you would take like, I don't know, you'd pick 5 and then you'd maybe spend like 30 minutes trying to understand the product. Like, what are the things that are hard to do? What are things that seem high value that we want to help users accomplish? Maybe like 30 minutes building the prototype. And then hopefully you can do it in like 2 takes. But I wasn't very good at Loom back then. I'm still not good at Loom, but I'm one of those people who like watches their Looms before they send them. So I end up doing like infinite takes. Probably say 30 minutes generously to do the actual recording. And then 30 minutes to like craft the email. You know, that's the other thing is this email, maybe I can send you a screenshot after. It was like, I would call out, it was always the same format. It was like, yada, yada, you know, James, CommandBar, new YC company, 3 bullets, 3 timestamps. Here are 3 specific things that are called out in this video. So like, you know, you got to make the template, or you got to write the email. So probably 2 hours, you know, you can't really do more than 5 a day. And there's like other stuff to do as well, you know, in the company. So I actually think like in the vein of do things that don't scale, I know a lot of companies that have employed a similar tactic, and all the companies I angel invest in, if it makes sense in any way, I encourage them to do this. This is maybe a hot take, but I think if this strategy doesn't work, you don't have a good product. Or as long as the people are opening your emails. Like if people are opening your emails and watching the Looms and no one's responding, either your messaging is like complete garbage, so much so that it's obscuring the product, or the product is not interesting to people.
Makes a lot of sense. Before you're now a big company, you have clients like ClickUp, HashiCorp, Gusto, LaunchDarkly. Take us to that moment where you started to have a more scalable sales motion. When was that? What was the strategies you deployed to get in front of these big names? And eventually, what were things that were not scalable, like the ones you said that you maybe continued to adopt, but maybe you dropped for a different sales motion?
We still do those emails, actually. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the do things that don't scale concept. On the one hand, it's created, I think probably PG was the one who came up with that framing. It's probably created billions of dollars of equity value, that piece of advice, because it gets you thinking about okay, if I truly had unlimited resources, what could I do? But I don't I think it's phrased slightly misleadingly. Instead of that don't scale, I'd say that might not scale, because oftentimes I think you can actually scale these things that don't scale. A couple examples, these videos, we still do these videos. It's 2 hours per video, and we've built tools that are a bit more efficient to help our sales team build these. So it's probably a lot less than 2 hours to do them today. And we've experimented with shorter videos. So instead of Loom videos, you do GIFs. So we're always trying to shave down the time to create a 95% version of one of these videos. But yeah, we can scale that. Another thing is our whole philosophy on customer success at CommandBar is we basically want to spend as much time with our customers as possible, which sounds simultaneously kind of crazy, because that's time is money. Why do you want to have a big team spending all this time with customers when you could be serving them efficiently? It also sounds a bit like motherhood and apple pie. Of course, spending time with customers, great. It's kind of a YC truism. But for us, we continue to do it. We'll set up a recurring meeting with our customers as frequently as they will allow us to. So a lot of our customers we meet with weekly. And sometimes we cancel the meeting, but it's a great, sometimes we just shoot the shit. It's a great touch point to just hear what's going on, hear what they're thinking about our product. And that's something we did in the early days because we thought we had to, just to get feedback, because we were building this wacky, weird product. But also we do it now. And I don't think we're going to stop anytime soon. We consider it a competitive advantage. I feel I don't even remember what your original question was, but whenever I hear there's things that don't scale, I feel in the early days, it's great because you do things that you don't think are going to scale. But then I find people will kind of be okay, it's time to scale, and abandon those tactics, when actually a lot of them do scale, at least series A, B, C, when you're still an actual scrappy startup.
What has currently worked for you as an acquisition strategy to land big logos like the ones you have on your platform? HashiCorp is quite big.
Honestly, a lot of our business is word of mouth inbound. So I think the kind of thing that's most repeatable is we often get discovered in other companies' products. So it's a bit of a catch-22, because on the one hand, that's great. That's virality. We want to be seen in other people's products. On the other hand, a big part of, I think, why CommandBar is successful is we don't feel in product. If you're an end user if you're in HashiCorp experiencing CommandBar, we don't really want the end user. We don't really care if the end user knows it's CommandBar. We want them to feel it's a native experience they're interacting with. Because from the research we've done, if you think a pop-up or something like that is provided by a third party, it usually is the case that you find it kind of less trustworthy. Now, there are examples Plaid is a great example, where Plaid is often more trustworthy than the underlying app it's being embedded in. But what typically happens, a very normal cadence, would be someone is using a product that uses CommandBar. They have some kind of motivating moment where they say, okay, I have some problem that one of these tools that helps users in software. So the traditional category is called digital adoption. We don't really identify as a digital adoption company because those are mostly kind of the pop-up experiences. Someone will say, okay, someone's asked me to look into tools like this, or we have a problem in our company that we think could be solved or ameliorated by one of these digital adoption tools. They'll find us because, rank pretty highly for digital adoption stuff. And then they'll be oh, I used you in X and it was awesome. I've experienced it as an end user. And that I think is really great. It's not so much a top of funnel thing. It's more like gets people from, what's the AIDA framework, attention to interest, because they kind of feel like they can trust the end user experience because they've experienced it themselves. But in terms of like scalable channel, honestly, like we're a very product led kind of marketing company. I think most people are discovering us because they've heard we're using another product, or like I said, because they experience it themselves.
I love the freemium model that you've built into your pricing. And one of the places where the free is actually viral is where you have the powered by CommandBar. How did that shape up in terms of getting inbound leads, as you mentioned?
It's great. I mean, we love powered by CommandBar. I think the kind of sad part, if you will, is that we often don't have powered by CommandBar and like products that have a lot of users, because we find those are the companies where it's like kind of most important to have that kind of non-third party feel. It's great. And I think like our goal is, I mentioned Plaid earlier. I think Plaid is a great North Star for a company whose brand other companies want to lean on and want their users to know. It's like Intel Inside, like ingredient marketing. You're showing off that you're using this cool, trustworthy tool for this important part of your product. That's where I want to get to. So the ideal kind of end state would be a user comes into a product, they see an experience, they see that it's provided by CommandBar, which is hopefully something they've used in another product, and they immediately know how it works. They immediately know they can trust it. And it's actually a net positive for the company to have our brand associated with this experience. Now, we're still like a relatively small company. I think we've got a long way to go until like our biggest customers want to lean on our brand. To be honest, like I think it would be a bit cuckoo to think that some of those logos you mentioned are like down to put our brand in front of all their users from day one. I don't think we're that far away, and we have a pretty big end user base now, and we're starting to see quite a lot of users show up in multiple products that use CommandBar. So I think we're kind of just entering a phase where we can try to be more aggressive with that viral loop.
Is there a challenge or a bottleneck that you faced as you were building your first 100? And was there a lesson that was learned that had helped you in the future acquisitions?
I think the biggest thing for us was positioning. So you kind of mentioned earlier, like, how did you get people to care? And I sort of flippantly was like, oh, they just thought it was cool, which is kind of true. But one thing we kept hearing from our early customers is we would get questions like, oh, are you a replacement for these kind of digital adoption tools? Or are you thinking about adding other ways to influence user experience in the product? Because like very simply, one of the things you do in CommandBar is you set up these things called audiences, which are kind of cross sections of your user base. And the idea is you can customize a lot of how CommandBar works based on who the user is. Are they a new user? Are they a user who's returned after a long absence? Are they like a high value user? Do you think they're like a decision maker? And you can imagine like if you set up these audiences, you want to use them in multiple ways. You don't want to just use them for tailoring your search bar experience. You want to use them for tailoring a lot of different experiences. And so we get a lot of questions like, oh, kind of what's next from here? What are you going to build beyond? And I'd say for the first kind of year, we were kind of very resolute in we're building a very narrow, deep product, and this is all we want to do for now. But eventually, we just started hearing this so much that we decided there's actually a bigger problem to solve, which is not just put this new building block in every software tool, which felt like a pretty big goal, but was actually like help users in multiple ways, be this kind of general purpose assistance layer on top of other products. And so we started positioning ourselves. First of all, we built more stuff. So we built these things we call nudges, these like proactive messages that can push users in the right direction, kind of similar in spirit to pop-ups, but if we're doing our jobs right, less annoying. And we started positioning ourselves not as this like category of one, no one else is building CommandBar company. We started positioning ourselves as, hey, for certain subset of the market who's familiar with these digital adoption tools, hey, are you familiar with these tools? Do you use one of these tools? We consider ourselves as improving upon these tools in these ways. So kind of not shying away from competition, basically, and using it to our advantage instead of kind of always trying to zig when others are zagging. And this has been huge for us. Like, it's been much easier for us to communicate our value proposition in relation to tools that a lot of people in our market already understand, instead of trying to, start from scratch. It also helps us reach the right people at companies, because if someone is using a digital adoption tool at a company, that's usually the person that is going to be an advocate for CommandBar. It's definitely been an accelerant for us in a big way.
What's next for CommandBar?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been asked this question a couple times this week, and I've been kind of like, we just launched this brand new thing. So can I have like 2 weeks to think about it? But no, seriously, like with this Copilot interface we launched, it's kind of cool because like our original vision was to be a natural language interface on top of software. And that's still a big part of what we do. And I actually think this Copilot interface that we launched, so it's natural language interface, kind of our goal was to go beyond just raw AI chat. So yeah, I can give users generative answers based on a company's docs that we were talking about earlier. Can also trigger walkthroughs or take action on behalf of the user. So that's why we call it like a user assistant. I actually think it's a much better or much truer expression of that original vision than our first product, which is still a big part of our portfolio, and search makes sense for a lot of use cases. But the ability to have the agent carry out tasks on your behalf and go back and forth and clarify has unlocked like a whole new set of use cases. So I think this is true for a lot of parts of CommandBar, but I think this experience should exist in any tool that people are using on their computers. Like, it's really not domain specific. I think I should know this stat better, but there's a stat floating around out there that says something like a fifth or a sixth of companies that could use one of these digital adoption tools are actually using them. It seems to be because they're not as effective. And, as a lot of people as end users, like we talked about, find them annoying. And so our goal is like kind of where we see opportunity is, yeah, for sure, the 20% or whatever that's using these tools today, we think that's very addressable. I think there's a lot of tools out there that need ways to help their users, but just don't find the existing tools effective. And so that's, I think, our big opportunity is kind of convincing those folks that they should consider a tool like ours, then it doesn't come with the same kind of baggage of the tools of the past.
One last advice. So you have two great co-founders with you. If there's someone listening who wants to start their company and they want to find a co-founder, where do you think is the best place to look, or what sort of framework should they be looking to adopt to find someone?
I got really lucky. Like, I met my co-founders in college. We also did computer science together. I think the trait that I think is really important is find co-founders who you respect deeply and think you can learn a lot from over a long period. Not just co-founders. I think a lot of people will meet a co-founders, and they'll get excited that it seems like this group, them plus the co-founders, can execute on an initial version of the idea well. Like, they have experience in this domain. The classic example would be like a non-technical person trying to find a technical founder. They've built a similar product. These kind of like, it's going to be so fast for us to get up and running. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. Like, if you don't want a technical co-founder who's like never built anything before, but I think it's not sufficient. Maybe necessary, but not sufficient. What's just restating, you need to have this like deep reverence for your co-founders intellectually, because if that is not there, it's going to be hard during the not great times, which there inevitably will be. You'll be saying like, is this really who I want to be spending my career with? Do I feel like I'm not growing? I think this happens to a lot of co-founders, is that they end up feeling like when the company's not doing well, they think, shit, company's not doing well, and I am not growing because I'm not working with people who can push me or teach me things. And so maybe that's the simulation to run. Be like, okay, let's say we're like 13 months in and we've achieved nothing. Am I excited to have spent like 13 months, 8 hours a day with this person? Or like, do I think I'll become a better person, technologist, whatever, because of it? And if the answer is no to that question, you better think they're like really freaking good at the thing that they need to do or that your success is like inevitable, I think to sign up for that situation.
James, this has been a blast. Thank you for stopping by. Where can people reach you?
Yeah, I mean, that's my life's work is commandbar.com, but also Twitter, X as at Dazzleoid.
Thank you very much, James. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to the First 100. We hope it inspired you in your journey. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify, and share it with a friend starting their entrepreneurship journey. Leave us a 5-star review. Your support will help spread our podcast to more viewers.